Good evening, members, and welcome to the meeting of the Standards and General Purposes Committee. We are now live streaming on YouTube. My name is Councillor Andy MacLeod, and I'm chairman of the committee. I'm accompanied by my vice chair, Councillor John Rubini. If I could ask members just to help members of the public, if we could all introduce ourselves. I'm actually the Farnham Councillor for Moore Park area. John?
Good evening. Good evening, Councillor John Rubini. I represent Shotton Mill and Haslemere on the county, borough and town councillor.
I'm Councillor Joan Hegan, representing Godalming Town Council as a co-optee to this committee.
Councillor Gemma Long, Elstead and Pepper Harrow.
Peter Nicholson, member for Haslemere East.
Councillor Michael Goodridge, Waverley Councillor for Bramley and Wallash.
John Ward, Farnham, Recklesham and Rowledge.
Thank you. Leila, have there been any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we received an apology from Councillor Joan Holroyd, who is the Elstead Parish Council co-optee.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the minutes of the previous meeting. Before I ask members to sign, I'd just like to comment briefly that the minutes of that meeting, the meeting on the 8th of January, were an important represent a very important meeting, and we agreed 5 important recommendations to full council. And members will recall that fortunately or thankfully the full council agreed to all of these recommendations with limited discussion in any of them. So that's very satisfying. In terms of the minutes of the previous meeting, are members happy that I signed them after the meeting?
Agreed.
Good, thank you. Leila, have there been any declarations of interest?
None received.
Any questions from members of the public?
None received.
Any questions from members of the council?
Again, none received.
Thank you. Now, the main item tonight is council procedural rules. And if I can hand over in the first instance to Ben Wicks to introduce this item. And after that, we'll have a discussion on all of the items.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So as the report states that, the council has a duty to maintain and publish a constitution. As part of the Joint Constitution Review Work Programme, the Monitoring Officer has prioritised the review of the council procedure rules. This report brings forward one set of new council procedure rules for both councils, both Waverley and Guildford councils, and they're based on good practice. Officers have worked hard on that, bringing it together, the experiences of my colleagues at Guildford, colleagues at Waverley as well. So, we've been working together quite closely on it. The Joint Constitution Review Group considered these in two parts, the first part being in December and then more recently on the 28th of March. And they've made the recommendation of these procedure rules to this committee. The entire set goes tonight to this committee, and Guildford's Corporate Governance Committee meets on Thursday. The aim is that there will be alignment of rules between the two councils, subject to slight nuances, but really it's about aligning the rules and being able to move forward. Subject to the proceedings this evening, it's recommended that these be considered by full council on the 23rd of April, should you be minded to recommend that. And likewise at Guildford Borough Council on the 16th of April. If I could pass on my thanks to the Monitoring Officer for all of her guidance during the working groups that we've had on this as officers, and my counterparts at Guildford Borough Council, together with the Joint Constitution Review Group. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ben. As Ben said, there was 2 meetings of the Constitution Review Group. The first one, which took place on the 18th of December at Guildford, the 3 of our members present, 3 Waverley members were present at that moment. Councillor Long, Councillor Follows and myself. So 2 of us here were at that meeting. and there was a very good discussion on items rules 1 to 10. The second meeting, 28th of March, 3 members were present, Councillor Goodridge, Councillor Follows, and again myself, and Councillor Long as well. So that we had 4 members present at that meeting. They were both good discussions, and what I propose we do now is have a similar discussion. We've got 31 rules to go through, and I'll comment in advance that Councillor Ward very helpfully sent an advance notice of some of his comments. So all of us who at the time have had the chance to look at them. But as we go through the rules, when we get to one that Councillor Ward has got comments on, if I can ask him to come in and give his comment on each rule as we get to them. Some of them we'll be able to go through quite quickly. So if you turn to page 27 of your papers, we can run quickly through all the rules. The first rule is the introduction rule, and I think that's very straightforward. I don't think there was no real discussion on that at the first meeting. But would anyone like any comments on the introduction rule? So we can take that as agreed. Okay. The second one is annual meeting of the council. Rule 2. Any comments on that? Anyone? So we can take that as agreed again. Rule 3.
Sorry, Chairman, 2.3 I have comments on.
Ah, right. Do go ahead and give us your comment, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. It's about election of the mayor. The current suggestion to me seems to be that the monitoring officer should chair that. I'm afraid I have an intrinsic objection in principle to officers chairing any council meetings. That's what councillors are elected for. But there is also a very practical objection in that the mayor is there to break a tie, and on the subject of the election of the mayor, it is the one time when they are obliged to use their casting vote if there is a tie, and if there is an officer sitting in the chair, she cannot vote, and therefore we cannot elect a mayor. So somehow I think the wording needs to be changed. I think there's some suitable wording in Rule 8 such that there is a councillor in the chair who can make a casting vote. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Would any other member like to comment before I ask Ben to respond? Okay, would you like to respond, Ben?
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Councillor Ward, for your early notification of that. And so I think what our proposal is, an officer proposal would be that if we go to, for ease of purpose, it is effectively going to reference Rule 8. But if we go down, so we're in the second paragraph where it says over their own election, the monitoring officer will, then we can go to Rule 8 and extract some words from Rule 8. And if I just read them out, the monitoring officer or their representative will preside and call for a motion that a member of the council take the chair. Then we go back to 2.3 to preside for that agenda item. So, or the first agenda item of business to elect the mayor. So that would be the original wording plus a little bit of the wording of 8, I think achieves what you want. And I think that is clearer, that it then means that there isn't an officer in the chair, that a member has been elected for the purpose of doing, of overseeing the election of the mayor, and satisfies the matter of the event there being an equality of votes, because there is now a member that can cast the deciding vote.
Would you be happy with that, John?
I'm perfectly content with that. I think that's an excellent solution, Chairman. And while we're on 2, I have another small point, but I'm very happy with that. Thank you.
Well, just one thing to point out, actually, which Ben can maybe just comment on. We have the issue that we have to get agreement from Guildford for this, and John is going to have to liaise through Susan with the Guildford Committee. So do you want to comment on how we propose to do that then?
Yeah, so we've still got a few days before the Guildford Committee. Well, it meets on Thursday, but as long as we're able just to take those minor, some of them might be minor, hopefully, suggestions and tweaks, and we then can present them to my counterpart at Guildford. We can consult with Susan, and then we can take it through to Guildford as these were the proposals from the Waverley Committee, so that Guildford are informed.
Yeah, thanks for that. Basically, inherent in the process that we're going through, the synchronisation between where we can between Guildford and this sort of thing is going to happen from time to time. Anyway, I think your next comment, John, is probably on 2.4. It's again back to you, John.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, 2.4.1. I just had a comment. It says in there the wishes of the political parties, and my query was normally it's the advice or whatever of the group leaders, because the wishes of the political parties, if a particular party had a few difficult members, might be unclear.
Again, any comments from anybody else before Ben responds? Over to you, Ben.
Yes, and thank you again, Councillor Ward, for the early notification, which allowed us just to look up the wording of wishes of political groups, because that comes from the Local Government Committees and Political Groups Regulations 1990. So within that, rather than restating it, the officers would then be expecting to get the communication from the leader of the group. So rather than rewrite it, I think that, you know, the wishes of political groups need to be expressed through the leader of the group. Item 3 is extraordinary council meetings. Any comments from anybody on extraordinary council meetings, Rule 3? So we can take that, we're happy with that one. So Rule 4, sorry, that was, we're now on to Rule 4. The Rule 3 was ordinary council meeting, I misread what I was saying. Rule 4 now, we're on to extraordinary council meetings. Again, I think Councillor Ward has comments on Rule 4.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and thank you, Ben, for your time this morning. 4.2 and 5.2 both have a list of business that can be transacted at those particular meetings, but it misses out business deferred from a previous meeting. And Rule, if I get it right, 9, dealing with quorum, specifically says that if a council is adjourned with unfinished business, that business will be deferred to the next meeting, whether ordinary, extraordinary, or special. So my suggestion is that in both 4.2 and 5.2, such wording is instituted so that business deferred from a previous meeting can be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Any member wish to comment on Rules 4 or Rule 5 in relation to what John said or anything else? No? But Ben, over to you to respond again.
Yeah, that's thank you, Chair. When we look in the extraordinary meetings will and then the VI, consider the items of business for which the extraordinary meeting has been called, I think our proposal then is to add words to that clause to refer back to 3.2x. So 3.2x is to deal with any business remaining from the last council meeting. But it would then mean that the reference to business is included within the same clause and also has an additional clause together with any outstanding words to the effect of any outstanding business arising from 3.2x. 3.210.
Would you be happy with that, John?
Yes, we had a quick chat this morning and I'm quite happy with that. It was just a small, basically, inconsistency, which I think needed to be sorted. And thank you for your time this morning.
Okay, so moving on, any comments on Rule 6? Place, date and time of council and committee meetings? No, they're happy with that. Rule 7, notice of and summons to meetings. No, okay. Rule 8, chair of council meetings. No, happy with that. Rule 9, quorum. Again, happy with that. Again, Rule 10, you have another comment, John, on Rule 10.
Yes, there was just a discrepancy between the appendix showing the changes and the actual Rule 10. I'm very content with Rule 10, where half hourly should be the time at which we would confirm that we wish to stay in these wonderful surroundings.
Okay. Ben?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Ward, that yes, the appendix has an error in it, that it said hourly, not half hourly, when it should have said half hourly, but the rule is correct, as you identified earlier.
Yeah, I think they've been incorporated or at least they were clarified. Yes, I haven't any problem.
Okay, good. Well, moving on to Rule 11, this is the next one. This is the next one, John, you wish to comment on?
I just had a certain amount of confusion, which may be the slowness of my brain cells working at this time of my life. But in 11.8, 12.14 and 12.17, there is a phrase which I think you all have typed out in the email that I sent, and I didn't really quite understand it. I think Ben explained it to me quite well this morning, but I'd be grateful if he could repeat the very lucid explanation for the rest of us, because I found it a bit confusing.
Over to you, Ben.
Yes, thank you, members. I think what we were trying to do here was to be able to provide for the question and the written response to be provided in advance of the meeting. So currently we receive the question, but the questioner has to wait for the meeting in order to receive the response. So instead of that, the proposal is that we would have the question and the written response published in advance in the supplementary agenda pack in advance of the meeting, which would then be taken as read at the meeting, so that you don't have to have the questioner read it out. You don't have to have the respondent reading out their response, but it enables there to be a supplementary question arising from the response that's already been published.
I think that's a good intention. Do you think the wording needs clarifying in any way? As John initially found it slightly confusing. Does the wording need clarifying?
I think, you know, we've got close to it as officers, and potentially, as long as we explain it and we provide the guidance to members, I think you know, the intention is that it is written out clearly. And I guess once we've got through a couple of iterations of it, words like supplementary agenda pack aren't yet used at Guildford. Things like that, but you know, things will become clearer, and I think with a bit of guidance, we'll get there without necessarily rewording.
I think Vice Chair would.
Yeah, just a very small thing. Transparency in that when we're meeting public. So with this change, still include public? Will they still be able to see the question, response, etc.?
Yes, so that it would be published on the website. So actually, it would be, in effect, clearer for them that they would be able to see the question and get their response in advance of the meeting, and then still consider whether or not they would like to come to the meeting. And then, which is what we don't offer them now, the ability to make to ask a supplementary question. So you know, that's quite a good step forward in transparency terms.
Thanks very much.
Very similar, actually, John, to what happens at Surrey for members' questions.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think it's a better procedure than what happens at the moment. Okay, that covers 11 and 12, I think, unless anyone's got any further comments on either 11 or 12. So moving on, number 13 is motions on notice. Any comments on rule 13? No, happy with that. Question 14, motions without notice. Happy with that? I think we had some discussion about that in the review, Michael. Actually, I don't know if you're involved. I think you were involved in these discussions, if I remember correctly. But I think that they finished up being happy with what has now been published. Okay. 15 is where we reach the next one, John, that you have a comment to make.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I had a number of comments here. Most of them are fairly minor. I think 15.6, when a member may speak again. I don't know whether there is an overarching right for the chair to use his discretion. I thoroughly support the thrust of this particular rule, which is to prevent members being over verbacious and non-constructive. But I just thought that the mayor should have the right to use her discretion to allow someone to speak again should they feel it would be useful. So we would still be able to stop the constant interruptions that have unfortunately become part of our life. But that was my comment.
Thank you, John. I think Peter has a comment before Ben responds.
Yes, thank you very much. It's 15.5 and it's a very small amendment. And the amendment is simply, all speeches must not exceed 4 minutes. So we delete the 6 minutes and we have 4 minutes for everything. And everyone really should be able to get their points across in 4 minutes. You know, if you marshal your facts, you make you either write things out or you have bullet points. It should work well. And it is a standard figure throughout the council. It's just simple and works better. So very simple amendment.
Ben, do you wish to comment on both?
I think we did spend some time as the officer group, because what it boils down to is, you know, we have to think about how Guildford's arranged at the moment, and Guildford have quite long speaking periods of speaking, and in a sense it was a case of negotiating to get to a suitable place, and I think that is a demonstration of us working together. We did come up with the 6 and the 4, and it's not standardized, but you know, 6, you know, they're not both 4, but it is to say that someone who is proposing a motion gets a bit longer to speak, but all of the other speeches being 4 minutes. And I think you know, the time we spent trying to get that, because it would be a significant change for Guildford, to a satisfactory place that we could make that proposal, which isn't a great change for us, for Waverley. So I think if with members' permission, we'd actually like to stay 6 and 4, because it would, it's you know, in part of the negotiation with Guildford on that.
Well, that's an interesting explanation, and I understand, you know, there's negotiations happen and you get to a point where everyone happily agrees. So although I don't particularly like it, I understand what you're saying, and I'll withdraw the amendment.
Yeah, I mean, it was 10 and 6 before we changed it at the last meeting. But personally, I take the view that if Guildford want to have longer time, that's a matter for them. To have our constitutions totally the same, this is something where, you know, officers in Waverley can easily cope with the difference between the two councils. And I don't, you know, if Guildford think it should be 10 and 6, well, so be it. But we be 6 and 4. I mean, I don't see we've got to marry down to our speeches to be the same. We're different sized councils. Yeah. If all 50 members wanted to speak for 6 minutes, heaven forbid.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, it's clear we're aligning as far as possible, Ben, but the two constitutions are not absolutely identical. In fact, they are, if you go through, there's points highlighted. It's usually to do with different committee names, actually, and that sort of thing. But the two constitutions don't have to be absolutely identical. It's important we align them as far as possible. Do you wish to comment further on that, Ben?
Yeah, I think without seeking further, I would say, you know, the time that we spent trying to, you know, work it through with Guildford, I want the opportunity to be able to talk to them again. And so it might be that we could say minded to or something along those. Because what's our actual proposal that you prefer a 4 and a?
It's a simple one, that all speeches must not exceed 4 minutes.
Yeah.
It's a standard feature of everything we deal with. I mean, if we can operate, as Michael says, which is very handy, if we can operate slightly differently, then why not do so? If we can't, then of course we can't. But if we can, why not? I mean, we don't like things going on more than 4 minutes. You know, really, it's awfully tedious. And 10 minutes is appalling. You know, so you know, if we can do 4, that'd be very nice.
At the review group, I think we reached a compromise of 6 and 4, and we're hoping that satisfies both parties. Do you wish to comment on that, Gemma? Because you were at the meeting.
No, just to say that's my recollection of that meeting as well, and that I think the Guildford members who were there were quite keen also to go with 6 and 4.
They were certainly happy to come down from 10. They agreed that was a bit over the top. I think that's what we're trying to achieve. Do you wish to take that back to Susan to discuss a bit more with
Yeah, I think, you know, where we've got, there is an opportunity. We've got that little bit of time between now and Guildford's meeting, just to, I'll put forward that suggestion. But Chairman, can I just, can you just go back to Councillor Goodridge, who?
Well, the only point I was making is that Guildford and Waverley don't have to have the same rules when it comes to timing. 6 and 4 is what we've had in the past, a proposer for 6 and everybody else at 4. And I see no reason of changing it. From Waverley's point of view, and if Guildford want to do something different, then doesn't worry me.
Certainly the Guildford members at the joint meeting, they seemed happy with 6 and 4, so they will hopefully be able to convince their committee that's what to go with.
Chairman, just because I'm aware that it might very well be that the members here, except for one, might be happy with 6 and 4.
Yeah, indeed.
Yes. So if we, through you, Chairman, if we can just say, you know, are you actually happy with 6 and 4?
If we can all confirm that we'd be happy with.
So then I don't need to pursue the actual other route, do I?
Mr. Chairman, it might make any difference, but I think 4 and 4 would be a much neater package, and I'd be happy to go 4 and 4. I think you can get your point across in 4 minutes rather than 6, but there we are.
Okay, so is it that the majority think 6, 4, and that we note that it's up to you, Chairman.
We just confirm that who would be happy with 6 and 4 if they put their hand up. I'll be happy with that. Okay, so I think the majority are happy with that. And if we can convince Guildford to go for the same, we'd have alignment.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got, unfortunately, quite a few. 15.6, when a member may speak again, which I think I started on a little while ago. I think whilst we want to stop people going on forever, I think the chairman or the mayor needs the ability to allow people, if she thinks they're worthy, to actually speak a second time. And this current one actually bans it.
The members think about it. I think that's a reasonable point myself. Any comments, Michael?
Could be the thin end of the wedge. You know, if you've got your 4 minutes to speak and you've spoken, okay, if there's an amendment, you have another 4 minutes. You have a point of personal explanation. So if somebody's misinterpreted what you said, you can put that as a point of order and explain yourself. But otherwise, I I mean, there's always a discretion with the mayor or the chairman in any event. I mean, usually on committee meetings, it's including this one, we've spoken on many occasions on this one item. You know, you don't enforce it.
No. If I understand correctly, what John is saying is that he feels that it's not an automatic right, it's very much at the discretion of the chairman or of the mayor. Is that what you're proposing, John, rather than?
As long as we're clear
ban?
that the mayor can use his discretion,
Yeah.
if there's some overarching clause somewhere in the constitution, I'm happy. But, you know, once you're sitting up there in the chair as mayor, actually, you can use your discretion and people are
Yeah.
unlikely to argue with you.
Yeah. Ben?
Thank you, Chair. So I consulted with Susan on this one, and I think this is one where, using Councillor Ward's word, that the thrust of trying to get the rule in so that it's actually clear that you know it's one's speaking only once is what this is trying to achieve. So I think also it would mean that, you know, there's no perception or otherwise about the mayor and choosing or you know, choosing members who they know have already spoken to speak again. So I think it was looking at the other rules which Councillor Goodridge has mentioned. You know, you've got point of order, point of personal explanation, and you know, there are plenty. You know, the rules of debate actually allow for there to be 54-minute speeches if there needs to be. I hope that there wouldn't ever be that. So there should be enough opportunity for a thorough debate. So I think, Susan, this is one that the monitoring officer is, you know, trying to introduce here. The thrust of this, as Councillor Ward would say, is to introduce to enforce and introduce and enforce the rule about speaking only once. So I think that's where this one is coming from. But as Councillor Ward says, that, you know, there is the chairing is a difficult task, isn't it, at the end of the day? And you know, you want the meeting to go well.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on, your next point was to do with right of reply, John?
Thank you, Chair. It was an observation rather than a request that we, at the moment, if I remember correctly, at Waverley, allow the mover of the motion to speak after the mover of the amendment. New wording is to do it the other way around. I have absolutely no problem with that. It seems perfectly reasonable. I was just raising it as an observation that it was a change, but I won't go to the wall on that one. (15.12) motions during debate. Yes. As you can see in my email, a member should not be heard further is listed, but it does not deal with a member being excluded. And I think probably if we get to the stage of a member being excluded, it's going to be quite emotional, and we need some very clear wording that it can be done.
Any comments from anybody else? Ben, do you wish to respond on that one?
Sorry, Council, so what was the proposal on this one? Does not deal with member being excluded.
Sorry.
Is there a cross-reference? Oh, it does deal with the motion to exclude a member. The wording of the last paragraph does deal with it.
Sorry, the last paragraph deals, I'm going this from memory now because I've got my email in front of me, but I can check that. The last paragraph deals with removing people who've breached the code of conduct, if I remember correctly, rather than breached Rule 23, which, if I remember correctly, is the rule that's when they've been basically a nuisance, to put it nicely.
Michael.
Chairman, I've noticed that what's before us today is very different than what was before us 2 or 3 weeks ago. 1513 was down for closure motions, and it seems to have been totally abolished. We made the point, I think, that we could truncate some of the 10 by putting them as closure motions see below. But the closure motion doesn't seem to be mentioned now, seems to have disappeared. I mean, points of order was 1514 before, and now 1513. Could I ask what's happened to closure motions, please?
I think you probably need to go back to Susan on that one.
I think without, I haven't got the list of what happened at the joint, I haven't got that list of the joint constitution. Is that when it happened at the joint?
Well, I think what all we said was we were happy with 15 and 12 and 13 as it was before us at the end of March. But there were some repetitions on the bullet points. For example, proceed to next business, take an immediate vote for action during the debate. And we thought we could just put those down as sort of closure motions see below or something of that nature, but not to actually abolish the whole of closure motions. Because they're not down, there's no mention of closure motions. So I wasn't clear we were just abolishing that paragraph totally, but
I do remember that discussion, actually.
yeah,
Certainly remember that discussion.
it seems to be a bit more drastic than I was anticipating. That's all.
I think we'd definitely have to go back to Susan on that one.
What was the original reference?
Michael,
The original document had 15.12 motions, which may be moved during the debate, and then it had 1513 closure motions.
and your point was to avoid repetition, wasn't it, Michael?
Yes, we were just repeating on the paragraphs in 12 and 13,
Yeah.
exactly the same items, and I just thought it could be, rather than repeating, you could just put them as closure motions, see below or something, as a generic group, rather than repeating them all. But I was only going to save about 4 lines rather than getting rid of a whole paragraph.
Possibly a slight misunderstanding of what happened at the meeting, or maybe a drafting issue, actually. I don't think we can resolve this here, actually.
No, but I'm just saying I've noticed that I've got both sets in front
If
of
we
me.
can go back to Susan on that one, Ben, I think that's the only thing we can do. Yeah? Okay,
Sorry, Chairman, 1512 looks to me, on rereading it, looks to be fine. I think I have got that perhaps slightly wrong.
okay. So you're happy with 1512, John? Yeah?
Yes,
So-
I'm happy with that. Sorry, Chairman, I'm slightly misleading you there, I think.
No problem.
And my last one was
1514.
1514. I think probably the monitoring officer and I had a different view on this. And I'm not going to go to the wall on this one. My thoughts were that it has occurred quite often in the chamber that someone has been quoted by another councillor as having said a certain thing outside this chamber, and I felt that they ought to be able to have a point of personal explanation that that isn't actually what they said outside the chamber. But I understand that the thrust of this is to try and just restrict it to the debate. I still think personally it should be a wider one, but I'm not going to go to the wall on it.
Yeah, I think when I consulted Susan on this one, in alignment with what Councillor Ward was saying, is that you know, by trying to solve a problem or solve a challenge, so it needs to be limited to the debate. Is the monitoring officer's view on that, rather than to allow matters that are not in the debate to find their way in. So it was you know, I think this is something the monitoring officer wants to have as it's put here.
I think nobody in the room will have heard things that are allegedly said or not said outside the chamber. So it's probably not logical for them to be part of our debate, actually. Would you be happy with that, John?
Yeah, I'm happy to withdraw that.
Yeah.
It was just a thought I wanted to air, but I'm happy to stand back on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's an important point within the meeting because people do take exception to being misunderstood or misquoted, don't they? So, and it does happen. Okay, so moving on then. Any other points from NB on Rule 15? Because that's taken a lot of the debate, both at this meeting and the previous meeting, actually. So I guess it's you're landed with the problem of taking that back to Susan now, Ben, and trying to resolve these issues. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, you know, as members have been in agreement on some parts, and some of the other parts are just either a discussion that needs to take place or a minor adjustment. So
Okay.
That's where we're at the moment, aren't we?
I had a comment, Mr. Chairman, but I don't wish to take it further. I've discussed it with Ben Bix, and I'm happy for it to stand as is. Yes, thank you, Chair. That says that, you know, for persistent bad behaviour of a councillor, the mayor may move various motions. I think somewhere else in the standing orders, it allows anybody to move such a motion. I just would like sort of just general discussion on it. I think if I was sitting as mayor and someone was being deliberately obstructive, I would probably ask for a motion from the floor rather than necessarily propose it from the chair. So I just wanted to sort of some confidence that it didn't have to be just the mayor that proposed it. But if there is a strong feeling that there is a reason for that, I'll settle for it.
Yeah. Thank you, and this is credit to my counterpart at Guildford who helped with this one. So it currently it reflects the procedures at both councils, but in practice, it will only be the mayor moving the motion that member either not be heard further or that they leave the meeting, because the disruptive member will have previously disregarded the ruling of the mayor, because the mayor would have given them that warning in the first instance. So I think that in that negotiation and the balance, it's something that we've already got, and it's something that I think that will be consistent at both councils.
Might I cheekily suggest that 28.2, removal of the mayor, be held over for the next 13 months so that I'm safe? Yeah, I think if you read my email, it says that none of these rules will apply to the executive unless specifically stated, and I can't find anywhere that it specifically states anything about the rules applying to the executive. So my query was, does that need to be there? But I suppose my follow-on query was, if we have a constitution, it seems perhaps a bit strange that the executive have a separate little constitution for themselves. But I think that may well be the situation at the moment. But it just seemed to be, some of it seemed to be just a bit unnecessary, that's all.
I agree that that does require explanation. You know, why is the executive exempt from rules that apply to every other committee and every other meeting? What's the thinking behind that, Ben?
So with the Local Government Act 2000, you get the division of responsibility. So you've got the council side, you've got the executive side, and the council side has its council procedure rules which apply to the committees. And over on the executive side, the executive has its own set of procedure rules. So that's what we currently have. Overview and scrutiny have their own set of procedure rules as well. So at this point, the executive is governed by its executive procedure rules and the access to information procedure rules as well. So those are the rules that we use for the executive, and the council has the council procedure rules, which then apply to committees like this one.
I understand. So will we at some stage reviewing the executive procedure rules or the ONS procedure rules if they're separate from the?
So there is quite a comprehensive work programme to get through, and we're still just at the early stage. But I don't have the work programme immediately to hand. But at some point, as part of the constitution review, you would get through.
Doing that.
Through it all. Yeah.
At the last.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not making a great point of it, but I think it might be a little tidier just to say something like the executive have their own procedural rules rather than to have people hunting through so many pages of the Constitution trying to find something that says something about the executive when in my long and boring weekend I couldn't find it. So maybe we just need a reference to executive being governed by their own procedure rules, or just remove it. I don't really care which. It just looks a bit odd somehow.
No, I agree. It does look odd. It looks as if we're almost saying that the executive is special. And they are special in one sense, but they have their own set of, perhaps we could word it a bit better then, yeah. Okay. Any comments from anybody else on that, or anything else for that matter? We've got through this quite quickly, but then a lot of pre-work was done by the review group meetings and so on. So I think we've had a very good discussion.
Yeah,
So,
just to mention one thing, I think there may be some controversy about the leader of the council being able to attend, which is a new item under 25(4), all meetings of all committees. With one or two minor exceptions, which includes overview and scrutiny. I think that may not be universally accepted.
It's a Rule 25.4,
which is not in our constitution at the moment, but we were told is something that a lot of councils do, which is basically say the leader can attend everything, whether he's invited or not.
that's something that
And that
doesn't.
includes overview and scrutiny, where you're subjecting the overview and scrutiny possibly to pressure from the executive
Yeah.
to toe the line.
What do other members feel about it? It seems a point that's certainly worth discussing. Yeah.
I think Michael has a good point about the overview scrutiny. It is separate to the executive, you're scrutinising the executive. And I think that possibly should be added to the list of meetings which a leader should not attend. I'm not worried about the leader attending other meetings, but I think for ONS, I mean, I think he can come along and be listened to it,
Yeah.
but not be a member of that meeting.
I mean, sometimes the leader is invited to
Well, so if he's
ONS
invited,
committee.
of course, it's different.
Gemma.
So I don't think there's a question of the leader being on ONS. Was that?
I think it'd be on.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think the discussion was that there have been times when current leader has attended and not been able to answer questions which he could have answered.
No, that's quite different. I mean, I think it's useful if
And
a
that this
leader,
would
if a
deal with
leader
that.
attends in attendance and is then asked a question, is able to answer. That seems to be sensible because he's able to add more to the proceedings rather than sitting as a member. So it's two very different things. So yes, I'd like to see the leader come to ONS. And I'd like him to speak. But and sometimes he may want to put his hand up and say, "I'd like to correct something. It's very valuable," and I do so. In which case, he should be able to be allowed to be there, but not wander in and just sit with us as a member of the group. So there's the two is slightly different things.
I think the issue which was discussed at the review group was that the leader on some meetings, some ONS committee meetings, he asked to be able to respond to an item, but he was refused by the chairman. So, John.
Yeah, I think I would like the leader to be there and be able to speak. That there are times, of course, when the leader has a lot more information than perhaps we as committee members have. And if it's for clarification, it may well help whatever committee it is to actually have that steer towards getting to the end of the vote. So I would appreciate if the leader at least could give that view at the meeting and be invited to speak.
Side of it, Michael, in your opinion, what's the downside of allowing
Well,
the leader?
it's a narrow line between a leader having the right to attend a committee meeting, speak, in effect, as any other member of the committee. The only thing he can't do is vote. So he's taking part, or could, under the rule, take part fully in the debate, like as any other member, but just can't vote. That's all. I mean, it's.
But at the moment,
at the moment, he's invited to speak, or to give information. It's just, I think it's particularly on overview and scrutiny, where councillors shouldn't feel intimidated. Is probably the wrong word, but shouldn't feel under pressure to toe the line, if you like. And with a leader there, it might be more difficult. And we're meant to be scrutinising.
yes.
I think it's, it's possibly a thin end of a wedge. Could be, I don't say it'd be abused.
My concern is really on the voting side. I mean, the leader should not be able to vote at ONS.
No,
but he should. But it doesn't necessarily. Reading that, you could perhaps take it as he can come along and be a member and just put his feet on the table and chat and vote and do whatever he likes. And I wouldn't want that, but I think the leader should be able to speak and should be able to ask to speak, and the chairman, of course, can say yea or nay, because the leader might say, look, you've got the wrong end of the stick here. It's important that you understand things I like to tell you about. So my concern would be the voting only. You know, clearly it would be wrong for a leader to vote at ONS,
I
but
don't think-
otherwise, let him come and let him speak with permission of the chair.
Yeah.
Current rules, you need permission. New rule, do it as a right, where the chairman wants him or her there.
Yeah.
As a right, rather than being invited.
Thank you, Chair. I'm never quite certain as a co-optee whether I'm able to speak on matters that don't involve the parishes, but certainly as a previous chair of ONS, I think that it can save a lot of time and rabbit holes if the leader with a wider knowledge base is allowed by the chair to correct factual misunderstandings.
Yeah. I can see that point. The danger, I guess, that you're worried about, and Michael, is the leader dominating the meeting a bit too much, actually. And ONS is supposed to be scrutinising the executive and the leader. What do you think, John? May I ask Councillor Ward to speak, see what he said? The very experienced councillor.
This is one that I didn't sort of catch on to in my analysis. Again, it comes down to personalities, doesn't it? If you have a chairman who really is keen to run the committee and get things moving, then presumably they would allow non-committee members to speak if they thought they had something to contribute. But I understand Councillor Goodrich's concern that this actually gives them carte blanche, whether the chairman likes it or not, to speak on any item. I have to say I'm slightly uncomfortable with that. I understand if it is thought that there is something to add, but it does perhaps give the leader a little bit too much ability to influence.
Gemma.
Seems to me that since there's quite a range of view in the room, that this is something that perhaps those views ought to be recorded and put forward, and the matter be debated in full council.
I guess that's one way of resolving it, possibly. John.
Can I just add that, of course, the leader can speak, which is what we're saying. However, the committee is there to make up its own mind. And that is only one view. I'm not sure the leader could browbeat an entire committee into going there. Well, I would hope not anyway. But on an ONS, I would assume that most of the members would have read the papers before they get there, understand what's going on. And despite the leader giving a view or clarification, I would hope they would still vote in the way they would have done.
Any member, including the leader, can put their name down to speak at an ONS committee on specific items. And the leader could, in theory, put his name down to speak on every item. So, but we're just making it a bit easier for him in that sense. Is that true, Michael? Would you accept that the leader could, if he wished to, put his name down to speak on every item?
I understand on occasions he does.
So, what difference are we making by giving him the automatic right, John?
I mean, I can just foresee a situation in which the debate goes into areas of factual misunderstanding that the leader may not have anticipated, therefore not registered to speak, but could still save a lot of time and wasted effort by having the right to be heard on a point of clarification, which the chair might not have understood
Well,
what he wants to say, or she.
You'd expect the chair to do that, actually, but the leader's point one is an occasion he's prevented from speaking by a chair that has happened. This is quite a difficult one, actually, Ben. I don't know if you wish to comment, Ben, as an impartial officer.
I think just to echo the view that this is a relatively common rule, I think, in constitutions where I've worked before, and some leaders don't want to go to any of the meetings at all. And I think it just depends on what the items are, and in order to be able to facilitate effectively the ability to make things clearer for points of clarification, provide additional information. So I think it's really not a unique clause as it's written here, and where I've worked before. You know, some leaders use it more than others.
I think it can be, as Michael said, a personality thing actually, and on the one hand, you don't want to stop the leader clarifying things, as Joan said, and intervening, but a chairman's got to have the right to run their own meeting as well. So is there any way you can reach a compromise where the leader does have the right to speak, but in some way the chairman can stop a leader inappropriately taking over a meeting? I don't know what the answer to that is. It's an interesting question to pose, but I don't know what the answer to it is actually. Yeah. Yeah. What would you suggest, Michael, as the person who brought this up? To allow the leader still to be effective in his role, turning up at ONS committees, helping the committee, clarifying matters and so on, but not dominating the meeting. Is there some compromise that you can think of that would satisfy both sides?
No.
Brevity is.
Yes. I mean, he is subject, I suppose, to the same rules as all the other members of the committee, so he can only speak once. I suppose if we put the word once after word speak, it would at least curtail there being a debate between the committee and the leader.
Yeah, if the rule was that the leader could speak on any item, but only once, except by permission of the chairman, if the chairman felt the leader could help by coming back on an
Isn't
item.
that the rule that, in theory, we all have at every committee meeting?
Yeah.
In theory, but in practice, I mean, if you're in planning or other places, you two tend to speak more than once quite often.
Yeah.
And certainly on the other licensing and, I mean, the committee this morning, I mean, you come back more than once.
Yeah.
When you're doing a hearing.
I would propose that the leader is slightly different and he should have the right to speak on any item at any committee meeting, but the chairman would have the right to restrict that to once only, unless the chairman, as Michael said, within his discretion allows the leader to come back in the same way he might allow anybody else to come back. Could that be worded appropriately then, if the committee agreed that that's a suitable compromise?
Yes, Chairman, I'll make a note of that and liaise with the monitoring officer with that.
If you can talk to the monitoring officer about that, it's
I think one solution is just putting in the word once after the word speak.
Yeah.
Which will give the emphasis that it's not a sort of unlimited speaking.
Yeah. I mean, with goodwill, it shouldn't really be a problem, to be honest, actually. If you have a sensible leader and a sensible chairman, there would not actually be a problem, but there we go. Okay, well, I've agreed that we'll leave it to Ben to deal with that issue with Susan. Okay, I think we're actually finished, so thank you very much, everybody. I think we're making good progress, and I look forward to the next meeting. Thank you, members.